Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our next program in the Maccabi USA at Home series. We hope you've been joining us and enjoying yourselves, and we look forward to tonight's program. It's a particularly exciting one. We have three amazing alumni who will be having a conversation tonight about all kinds of topics, including our current situation and the NBA's response to the situation and how people are adjusting there and what we're all doing. First, I'd like to introduce two members of the conversation, officers of Maccabi USA, who will be facilitating this dialogue tonight. Donna Orender, who is the founder and CEO of Orender Unlimited and the CEO of Generation W, which is a nonprofit advocacy organization to advocate and empower women and young girls. She has served as president of the WNBA, senior vice president of the PGA, and also played professional basketball in the WBL. She is a Maccabi USA alumni as an athlete, the parent of alumni athletes, and currently serves as secretary of Maccabi USA. I'd also like to introduce our co-facilitator, Arnie Filkow. Arnie is the CEO and president of the Jewish Federation of New Orleans. Previously, he has served as president and CEO of the NBA Retired Players Association, president of the New Orleans City Council, executive vice president of the New Orleans Saints. He is the parent of a Maccabi athlete, and he's vice president of Maccabi USA. So welcome, Donna and Arnie, and I'll turn it over to you to introduce our special guest.
Okay, hey everybody, good evening, and hi Todd. Hey Arnie.
Hey Donna, how are you?
Hey Donna.
Arnie's brilliant idea, and Todd, 8 o'clock on a Monday night, who else would we rather spend it with? I'm sure you picked us and we picked you. It's perfect. So for those of you who don't know Todd, if you're not related to him or his best friends, Todd, this is amazing. You're the senior vice president of social responsibility for the NBA, but you oversee the NBA, the WNBA, which by the way, I should add, we had most best lovely time working together, the NBA
Right.
League and the NBA 2K League, social responsibility efforts, community partnerships, public service initiatives. You also direct, and this is cool, the league's government affairs, and I know how involved the NBA is. It has to be so fascinating and interesting, including the White House and State Department relationships. Really, could you help us out now in the White House? And managing the league's communications and engagement. You've been there a long time. I mean,
I have.
Good, but like nearly 20 years?
Started when I was 8, Donna, you know that.
I know, and I knew you when you were 11, and you were brilliant then. In 2016, NBA Cares was recognized by ESPN with its inaugural League Humanitarian Leadership Award, no doubt, because of Todd's work and his great colleague, Kathy Behrens. And before you did this, you worked for the City Parks and Recreation. You also teach at Columbia University in the School of International and Public Affairs. And most importantly, you played soccer at Cornell for 4 years, and you're on the board of Maccabi USA. And I should mention that we're also board members together at the UJA Federation in New York as well. So Todd is amazing. He's a mensch, as we like to say, but you're doing amazing work, and there's so much for us to dig in. And we want to know about your history, we want to know about your playing. But Arnie, if it's okay with you, Arnie and I kind of talked about this. March 11th will be a day in history. Honestly, March 11th is the day when the pandemic became so real as the NBA made the announcement, as Adam only can, and said, hey, we got to shut down for a while. And you obviously were part of that circle, and I know all of us are interested in what you can share about this day that will be remembered forever.
Yeah, it was quite the night, Donna, as you can imagine. And I know, just want to say thank you and hello to everybody out there, and to Donna and Arnie, who are two of my favorite people I've had to work with and part of the NBA family. Thanks for having me tonight. It was a really crazy night. I think, leading up to it, there had been conversations, and taking a step back, this is something that we had been part of the relief efforts in Munan and in China. As you know, Donna, we have a very big office in NBA China, so we had been heavily involved in working and making sure our colleagues are safe and happy there. And they were already kind of shelter in place in China and a number of cities. And so they were living this life. And I had been talking to them since January to really help on relief efforts. And we had done a number of things to support the hospitals in Wuhan, setting up medical equipment and different pieces like that. So we had really got firsthand knowledge in terms of what was going on as we started to prepare. And you might have seen this in some of the ESPN articles and others. Obviously, there's protocols and things that you look at. And so we had been planning leading up as momentum had been building around COVID-19 and what would be happening, particularly in the United States, as more cases came forward. And then that fateful night, unfortunately, Rudy Gobert tested positive. Once he tested positive, we knew we had to put the season hiatus to make sure everybody was safe, the players, all the staff and coaches, all the fans. That was first and foremost. And it played out very publicly. But we were ready for it, and we wanted to make sure that I think the first thing we wanted to do is make sure everybody was safe. And I think at that point, people didn't really know that much about it here in the U.S. I think to your point, it brought it to the forefront. It happened very publicly on television on ESPN during one of our games when we stopped the game from tip off and we made the announcement. And that really kind of set off a whole series of protocols to make sure that we were doing the right things. It also, to your point, it really raised the consciousness of everything going on. And I think for us, the first piece was just to make sure, again, that we were safe, that we were following the right guidelines, that we can make sure that first and foremost, the players that were at the arena and the fans and everybody over there can be handled safely and healthily to get them out. And that's really how it played out. I think, for us, I remember going into the office the next day. It was my last day in the office and the last day of all of ours in the office before we started working from home. And we immediately started thinking, as we always do, what can we do here? Besides for the things that we were doing to put the right protocols in place. And there was a protocol that was triggered that night when that happened to make sure all the pieces were in place in each city, that the teams were following the right protocol with testing, they're following the right protocol with health and safety measures. But most importantly, what can we do to give back here, and what can we do to raise the consciousness around COVID-19?
All right, Todd, I'm going to jump in. Thank
Please,
you for
Arnie.
joining us. And you are one of my favorite people, so we're honored to have you tonight. And to everybody that's on the Zoom call, I hope you're all doing well. And thank you for joining us on a series of these virtual meetings that we're doing. And I offer my hope for good health and for all of you and your families. So Todd, I want to talk about a couple things. First of all, I want to follow up from Donna, because one of my dear friends in life is a guy named Thurl Bailey, who we remember from his North Carolina State basketball championship. But he was in the arena that night in Oklahoma City, and he shared with me what it was like. I guess in many ways, it doesn't surprise me that the NBA paved the way for what followed in a crazy couple days of sports announcements. But do you look back now and look at what the NBA did that evening that really, led to where college basketball decided to go relative to its tournament, and Major League Baseball and every other sport? I mean, you really led the way for that. Have you given just some reflection on what you all did and how important it was?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole sports community at large, I wouldn't just put us there. I think it just so happened that one of our players tested positive, and I think we would have done what anybody would have done, which is make sure the right protocols are in place. I think we work very closely, as you know, across all leagues and across all teams, and with players are talking. And I think what had happened after that is it really just kind of brought it to the consciousness that other folks need to focus on this and take it very seriously. And you saw the dominoes kind of fell right after that, but we just happened to be in that position. And a lot of credit to the commissioner and to others. I think we had been planning scenarios. When you're kind of going through this and you saw everything kind of building, you have to be prepared, and you do the best you can. I think the most important thing I look back upon that I was proud of is that I think we handled it the best you could. You can be calm. You can make sure that your players and your kind of key folks are safe in the arena and things. There's always going to be a little bit of confusion, but I thought that was handled really well by a number of folks across the board. And that's not just our league, but others. And then in the sports community at large, once that happened, we all really have communicated together to make sure that we're following CDC protocols and doing all the things necessary to do that. What's amazing is you watch sports in general and what it is to be a part of the public conscious. of consciousness of everything going on. And the minute that happened in sports, it really transcended so much for other people about how serious this was and how serious we needed to treat it and what we needed to do to be safe, to really flatten the curve. And the acceleration from there, I think, has been what's jarred me. I mean, every morning, I think we all feel it. You wake up and there's something different in the news. It's almost overwhelming to follow. And so, I think for us, it wasn't, we don't spend a lot of time looking back. We always look, okay, what's next for us? That's always been our mentality. I think, Arnie, you know that all too well with us. And so, the next day it was, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to use our position to get out the word to make sure others are keeping themselves safe? How do we make sure that we're communicating and taking a leadership role with our other colleagues in sports to make sure we're using our platform to get out the message globally? And I think that was what was most important to us. And so, I think we were in that position that night, but I think the relationship we have through the sports community, which is incredibly tight knit, allowed for others to kind of reflect back, take a look, and then we all collectively made the right decisions for our sports.
So I'm going to tell everybody who's on this call, Todd, don't worry, no trick questions, but
you can ask them, Donna. I'm ready.
You told me that you do know the date when all sports are coming back, but we're going to answer that at the very end. Okay? We'll get to that at the very end. All right, so listen, you're a kid growing up. Where'd you grow up?
Long Island.
Long Island. I'm a Long Island kid too, and you love sports. So tell us a little bit about your soccer career.
So while I spent the last 20 years at the NBA, my first love is soccer. I played on the Maccabi team in '97. Had the opportunity to go to Israel, which was, as it is for all Maccabi athletes, a life-changing experience and something I'll never forget, and has really kind of shaped and influenced my life and shown the importance of sport, primarily to bring people together and how it's such a tool of connection and convening in a way that almost anything else can't be. And so, for me, I always loved sport. I grew up the son of not one, but two physical education teachers. My dad was an athletic director for 40 years, my mom for 20. And so for me, sports was just a part of my everyday existence along with my brother. So we grew up and, in my household, you had to play a sport every season. That was the rule. And so, to say that sports had a influence in my life wouldn't be far pressed. And so for me, I always wanted to be involved in sports. And Donna, you know this personally, I've talked to you about it before. Even in high school, I know what I loved most about sports was the camaraderie and the things that I individually learned and then collectively learned as a team, and the understanding of winning and losing and all those kind of life skills that transcend the court or the field or whatever sport you're playing, how valuable it is in doing that. And for me, when I went to school, I searched out and wanted to do something. I didn't know exactly what it was. I wound up going to Cornell to play soccer and go there, but I studied family therapy thinking maybe I'd get into sports psychology. And I actually was very influenced. I took a course from a woman named Professor Elaine Starowski at Ithaca College, who's a terrific kind of leader here. And she really kind of showed me the—
Starowski?
Elaine Starowski. You might have her book there. Donna ran off to get it, I'm sure, but Elaine was very hugely influential.
Is this her book? Is it Ellen?
Yes.
I wrote the forward for her book.
Yeah, there it is. Look at that. So Ellen, I should know that after 20 years, but she was highly influential in getting me more involved and really looking at the larger issues, and for me, that was life-changing. And I started realizing the impact on gender in sport, on race in sport, and all these areas that sport can do. And I was hooked after that. And from that moment on, I realized that while I loved playing sport, the power of sport to bring people together and address issues was something I wanted to get involved of, that you can, individually and collectively influence people. And that's what I started to study. I went to work at the parks department after I was done playing soccer because I wanted to be able to use the city, which when you think about New York City, and for those that are in New York City or familiar with the area, that your parks are your backyard. And so everything that you do is there. And I really was enthralled with the idea of bringing sport to different communities throughout New York. And I loved it. And I did a lot of work with children's services and other things in group homes. And then I got the opportunity about 3 years in. I actually wasn't looking, but I had the opportunity to go to the NBA and do what I love, which is do community programming. And so, I've been there ever since. I won't go through my full NBA career, but it's been a pleasure to work for both two commissioners, and David and then Adam, who really have put this at the forefront, and the opportunity to work with great leaders like Donna, who really saw the importance of this and put it, at the crux of what we're doing. And what I would say about it is, while this all sounds like feel-good stuff, the reality is for us at the NBA, social responsibility is such a core business pillar of who we are that has been a differentiator for us. So what we talk about this being the social consciousness of doing these types of things and seeing companies do it, this is something that's been really important to who we are. It started with David really building it up while we had programs forever. And I think Adam has now carried that forward. It's helped us with the relationships with the players, and it's helped us with our business. And it's really helped us with a focus to really make sure that we use our position to have that impact that we can. And I think that always, when we launched our stuff around COVID-19, that was the great piece about it. It is that during this horrible situation, you knew that it was like, okay, how fast can you get going here? And what can we do? And what's the right thing to do? How do we use our position to make sure we're having that global impact? And I think, as I've grown in my career, it's nice to see that. It's also why I've been at the NBA for so long. So here's this passion I had as a kid. I loved it. I saw the power that sports had to me to change my life. I went to college. I discovered a professor and others that were so passionate about it. Richard Lapchick, obviously a number of his books. He's one of my mentors, and to see all that. And then I said, what organization, what can I do? And I believe sport can be a differentiator. But when I graduated college, it was like, yeah, sure. If you're a coach or a teacher, you can do that. And my parents were doing that. I wanted to do something different. The NBA provided that platform, and it's really been life-changing for me, and to be a part of something where an organization fully believed it. And then you can really show the output of an organization can really differentiate from a business standpoint as well.
Well, Todd, I'm gonna kind of take it and follow up just a little bit on what you said. First of all, it's nice that you mentioned Rich Lapchick, because I think all of us, Donna, yourself, myself, he's been a mentor in life for all of us, and one of the greatest people on this planet that's helped people in so many different ways. So two questions I want to ask you. You kind of poo-pooed the fact that you got the job in the NBA. There are millions of people that would love to work in the NBA.
I didn't poo-poo it, Artie. I didn't poo-poo it.
So
I'll tell you a story about it though after.
No, I want to ask you two questions. Well, one
Sure.
Personally is, when you got that job offer from the NBA, you were a younger man at that point. What was your emotions? What was your feeling? And
Sure.
then second of all, you worked for two of I believe, the greatest leaders in the sports world's history. And I would only put President Orender in that mix.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay. But
Donna was very influential.
David and Adam are truly incredible leaders, but different personalities. And I just thought it would be interesting to talk about what it was like to work for both of them.
Sure. So I'll take the first question, which is the job at the NBA. So when I started interviewing at the NBA, I was actually interviewing for a communications role for Mike Bass. And I remember I went through 7 interviews for it. I was a finalist. And, I think back, and again, I will say this, and it sounds ridiculous to say it, but for me, my passion was always programming and interaction and bringing that out. I just loved it. I can't sit still for very long. And so for me, that was always what I wanted to do. I was a finalist for a communications job. And I remember writing this letter to Mike that I would love to work at the NBA. It's such an amazing place, but I don't want to work in communications. I want to work in community relations. I want to work in events and programming. And I sent that at the same time I didn't get the job. So it wasn't the reason I didn't get the job. But then a month later, Kathy Barron started. And Kathy hired me. I was her first hire at the NBA. And so Kathy's the president of social responsibility and player programs, but I've been with her for 20 years. So it's a very long time. And I was very lucky to kind of fall into, very rarely do you fall into a great mentor role with someone where you're very different, but Kathy just continues to be somebody that I have an incredibly close relationship. I learn from every day and grow from, and it's grown into more of a partnership. And that's been amazing to have. And so, I think when you're younger, you don't realize, but I think that the first thing I would say is always follow kind of your heart. If you're going to spend time doing something like in sports, if you're passionate and you believe in it, you're always going to be better at it, or at least you're going to bring your full self. And so for me, that was important. And so I was lucky enough to get that opportunity at the NBA. I think if I went back 20 years, I'd probably smack myself in the head. But you know what? When you're young, you make some decisions that sometimes lead you down the right path. So I got lucky. In terms of working for David and Adam, it's always, the great thing is Adam's been there for a very long time. People, that. I mean, Adam had 6 jobs before he became the commissioner. So he's been a colleague since I've been there since the start. So I've known Adam for 20 years. He's amazing. And it's been amazing to see. And watching Dave and Adam work together, and that transition itself, I think was watching a leadership lesson in terms of how do you transition a tremendous, leader like David and transitioning it to Adam and the time it took. And Donna, you saw it, and others. And I think that really helped catapult Adam to a lot of the success that he's had in terms of that transition and them working so closely together for a while. I think, people have asked me this question before. My feeling is that the right leader at the right time. When David took over the NBA, he was we were on tape delay 2:30 in the morning on ABC. He was the general counsel league. It was the early 80s, and David really kind of catapulted a league, and really, David is a hard charger in doing that. It really got us to a point where when Adam took over, we were a global business. But Adam's vision, and I always remember when Adam talks about it, he's like, I don't want to be the best sports league. I want to be the best business. And when you hear a leader talk about that and set that type of expectation, it's incredible. And I think the things that David did at the time made sense for us at that point. And when Adam took over, the next leader comes in that can take us to the level that we need to get to based on where our business is there. And I think that was the really impressive transition between the two of them, and watching how well they work together, watching how they complement each other in skill sets, and then watching it. And I can't tell you, you're right, Arnie. I mean, working for David for 14 years was an amazing experience. He's an incredible, incredible leader. I miss him every day. He's somebody I talked to right up until the end. And it really was a tough start to 2020 to lose David. Adam transitioning, it's been incredible to see Adam not only grow into the seat, but become this leader that you just know he is. And you can see him do that, and the relationships he built with players and what he's done with the business and putting kind of stakeholders first in that piece, it's really helped catapult our relationships and the way we work with our players now and do things. And you saw it through a lot of, particularly the social justice work, was really a collaboration between people talking at the league. And I think it was handled very well because of that. It was when you're all in the pool together in a difficult situation, if you trust each other, you can always work through it. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but you will always kind of get to that other side, and you can rely on each other and believe that the other person is going to do what they need to do to be there. And I think Adam really kind of helped instill that in all of us, and he's been terrific. And so incredibly lucky to have both. It's the reason why I'm still there after 20 years is it's hard to find leaders like David and Adam in the world.
Right. And that's true, Todd. And I have to say, I'm so mad at myself because I am on the advisory board for the DeVos School for Dr. Lapchick's program.
That's right.
I have to tell you that there isn't a student that doesn't say in that program, I want to do social responsibility for the NBA. And I'm like,
right.
I swear, if I had $1 for every person who said they wanted to talk to you, and I don't send them through, I'd be rich.
You sent a lot of people my way, Don.
Limited seats, and I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. We'll talk about it on the side. We have questions from Arnie. I have a couple of questions from people who are listening. I'm going to convey those.
Sure. Yeah, let's take those.
Was from Joanne Pasternak. She wanted to know the name of the book. It's Women and Sport: Continuing a Journey of Liberation and Celebration by one of Todd's great professors. And literally, yes. I did write the forward for that one.
And a shout out to Joanne, who is a terrific leader in the social responsibility space herself. I'm glad she's there. We have to get in touch. I know I owe you a phone call, Joanne. But Joanne led the 49ers work and particularly did a terrific job at the Golden State Warriors. And I know she's a terrific leader in our space as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, hi, Joanne. All right, now, Kenny Silverboard. Before I do Kenny's question, Brian Schiff, I love this question. For fun, if the season had played out, who do you think would have won the title?
Whoa, I don't know. It was interesting. I was really excited for the season because when you look at the playoffs and when you looked at the teams, it was wide open. I was starting to see the Lakers gel together. I think, when LeBron and Anthony Davis were on, it's hard pressed to see anybody beating them, particularly with LeBron's experience. And so that's where I started to lean to say, okay, maybe we're going to go back to LA. But it's so interesting with the playoffs, and I think this if you watch it all play out. It's April. It's who stays healthy, how does it go, how do people step up at different times, and I think I was really excited to see it this year because it was gonna be brand new. I think we were all excited to see what was gonna happen and who was gonna be next. But I think the Lakers really were starting to come on pretty tough at the end, and I was really curious to see if they can make a run at it. Look, I think with another year under the belt and things like that, the Lakers are going to be there for a bit. Same with the Clippers. I mean, it'd be interested to see if Kawhi and Paul George can get it together. And so I was excited to see that rivalry and see what happens in the West. And I really liked, I like Boston in the East. I think they were going to come on a little bit. I know they had fallen off a little bit, but I really liked them. That was I was just waiting. As a fan, I was excited to see it all. They talk about dynasties and things. I don't think you will fully appreciate them when they're there, but this year being so open and so many stars at different places, it was going to be a really exciting playoffs for sure.
Yeah, I have one more here, Arnie, and then I'm going to throw it back to you. This is from Kenny. Did the cancellation of the Ivy League basketball tournament resonate at all before the shutdown? Because they did that about a week ahead of everyone.
Yeah, it's true. The Ivy Leagues, I mean, shout out being an Ivy League athlete. I really appreciate that. It was interesting to see the shutdowns over time, right? And so the Ivy League was the first, I believe they were. And they also were Harvard was, I think, the first to kind of postpone classes for the year, which is also important. And it was interesting to see the rolling piece there. The hardest thing as I watch this all unfold, and I know I do some government engagement work and stuff, as Donna mentioned, has been the narrative around the 2020 hindsight of when you should do something. And I think as a leader, at least what I'm looking at it's very hard to make decisions looking back 2 months and say, well, if you'd known then what I know now, then we could have prevented it. And you hear that talk a lot. And I don't really think you can spend a lot of time doing that other than to learn from things maybe you can do in the future versus spending so much time in the past. But the Ivy League was very quick to say, you know what, this is our student athletes are most important. Let's make sure they're healthy and they're doing those types of things. And it was great to see, everybody got there. It took time, and everybody has to make their own decisions. And that's tough. I mean, it's not an easy thing. It's not the same any community across the states as we know this, and there's still issues and challenges. We see protests happening in different parts of the country. And so it's one of those things where, I wish it was so easy and straightforward in terms of decision making, but the Ivy League got it right. They were there, and they certainly made that decision very quickly.
So Todd, you are a really smart guy, but I have to tell you, I'm a Jewish Badger from the state of Wisconsin, and how you think Boston was going to beat my Bucks out of the East? No way.
I don't know. I'll tell you, Arnie. I mean, Giannis, it's going to come. I mean, he's unbelievable, and he's an unbelievable guy. And I'm excited for him, and I'm excited for that. I know Peter Fagan's there. They've put together a really just a terrific team. Yes, you're right. They are going to be very tough to beat. It's interesting out of the East. I was wondering if they were going to pull it together. You have to get over that hump, as you know. And it would have been interesting to see if it was their year. And people would be like, Boston was falling off, but Boston was very deep. And I'm a big Brad Stevens fan. And so, and by the way, I grew up a Knicks fan, so this is very difficult to say. I want to make sure I'm clear on the call when I say that. But it's really important, I think, that I'm excited to see what they do in the future, and I'm excited to see what Giannis can do to carry them through the playoffs for sure.
I know. I'm kidding you a little bit here. Hey, what I want to ask you, because I think it would be interesting for the people on the call, is Donna and I have seen firsthand what social responsibility with the NBA does around big time events like All-Star Weekend and finals. And I saw it personally in New Orleans, what you and Kathy and others did for our city. We owe you a debt of gratitude we can never repay. But just maybe briefly talk about kind of like All-Star games. What does your area get involved in on events? How do you deal with youth? Because your youth engagement is the best anywhere in sports, in my opinion. And I think people would be interested in that area.
Yeah, no, thank you, Art, for that question. Thanks for the compliments. I think for us, first and foremost, All-Star is a platform to do that. I think it starts with the way our approach has been. And again, I would go back to David when we went through this. When you look at our social responsibility and how we got to where we are today, it started as most social responsibility programs start at times during a time of crisis. So we were coming off the lockout in late 90s, early 2000. Michael Jordan retired. Now that we got the Last Dance back, everybody can relive some of those glory days. And then the Malice in the Palace happened. And when the Malice in the Palace happened, I think as a business, we were at an all-time low. And I remember it was around Thanksgiving, and that was it for Thanksgiving. And we all were in the office talking about ways. And there wasn't one thing we can do But what became clear, and I think it, you heard it from David and you heard it from others, was we need to own this. We need to make who we are part of our DNA. And what that means is, while we want to be the best sports league, how we go about being the best sports league is important. And what that meant was we needed to use the power of our brand and celebrity of our players to address important social issues. And that became our mission statement as the league. We've since launched a calling, but we launched that in 2004. And I bring that up because when you do social responsibility, or you hear about it in companies, or you do it at events at All-Star, and this will go into the question, you usually look at social responsibility as a nice thing to do. Most think of it as a foundation. They confuse philanthropy with social impact. So you think, if I have a foundation, then I can do good things in the community. A foundation is great, and philanthropy is great, but it's just a vehicle in terms of your vision. And I think what we realized is we wanted to make this a part of our business. So regardless of what you did at the NBA, you had to keep this in mind. This was our mission. This was on everybody's computer and stuff. And then the vehicle to do that became NBA Cares. And so becoming the facilitator of that was nice, because now all of a sudden it wasn't just our department running this. It was, we were facilitating for the entire organization. And so what we did, and Arnie, Charlie Rosenzweig very well. What we did is, social responsibility departments usually live in community. They usually live in communications or marketing. Maybe they report through finance, or you'll C-level suite, right? But very rarely are they a standalone department. And what we became is a standalone department called Social Responsibility and Player Programs. And really what we decided was everything off the court. And so when we created this department, we said we revised our strategy, right? Launched this new mission statement. We needed to make sure that we built a department that was able to kind of really bring this strategy to life. And so we aligned any kind of group that engaged with stakeholders. So current and former players, dealing with the Players Association, dealing with the parents and the wives and other partners of players, everybody into one department. That department reported directly through, at the time, Joel Littman, who was the president of league operations, and now it goes into Adam, and putting Kathy in charge in that seat. And now all of a sudden we had all these different groups that came together, and it's made up of 4 groups. You have social responsibilities, what I lead. You have youth basketball. We have player development, which does education programs with the union for everything off the court with players, and player marketing, which is really critical because obviously when players come to the league, they want money. So now all of a sudden you have to come through my group, and you have to come through everything to really talk about what that means to be a brand ambassador and really carry that flag forward. And so when that group came together, it became really important. And then for us, it was, what's success? What does success look like? And for us is, how do we make sure that people understand who our players are? That if you look at 100 people, 10 people will hate our players, 10 people will love our players. You have 80 people who don't really know, depending on what the situation is, if you look at it broadly. And David says, if you think about it, it's really how people feel about your players for us. And so this department was really about how people feel about our guys. How are we working with them? How are we making sure we can work collaboratively to position that? So now you look at an event like All-Star, and you see it as your pinnacle in which you can highlight this type of piece. So when we looked at, for example, in New Orleans, we started looking at what can we do. And I know we were coming off Katrina at the time, and we did all these types of things. It was, we need to make this a part of All-Star, the part. So instead of it being a party, how do we make sure we do something where all the players are going out and volunteering, that we're working with the city, the mayor and the governor and others to make sure that we're doing the right things and what's needed? How do we work with the team and the franchise to make sure we're lifting them up, since they're there all year round and after we leave? And how do we make sure we're positioning it in a fun and creative and engaging way? And so we started thinking about that. But the great thing is, when everybody's helping you paint the fence, it's really easy in social responsibility to do really good work. So the broadcast department's thinking about the events group is thinking about it, because they know this is a part of our mission. And so when you do All-Star and you do youth engagement, and everybody's involved in looking at different ways in their areas to integrate it in, you have a cohesive strategy. And I think that tactically is what helped us really kind of lift NBA Cares up in a way. And by the way, and I'm looking at 2 of the people that helped us do it. I mean, there's no greater leader in kind of moving forward the W than Donna. It was, she was terrific at kind of helping. I spent a lot of time with her building up a lot of the social responsibility work we did, and doing that off Val. And then, we just had some really great leadership there, and how important the W was and continues to be there. And then Arnie with the Retired Players Association, really trying to get the guys to understand that there are business opportunities through this, but there's also good engagement, and that reputationally it's important. And I think as you've seen social responsibility shift, so you look at All-Stars that we've done this, time has shifted a lot since 2000. You look at crises, and when crisis happens, it shifts all of us. We don't know how we're going to come out the other side. We know it's different. And I look at 2008 when really we lost trust with the financial crisis in banks and others, and everybody turns to social responsibility. And then, you saw this movement, and Joanne knows this all too well. Like when you have this movement in terms of, first it was it was Kaepernick kneeling, but it was so much more than that in terms of players speaking up for social justice and using their platform. How do you do that? And all of a sudden, as a company, this belief of it being a core pillar became really important, because for us, as you think about social responsibility, it became a part of who we are. And when you're talking about that, how do you collaboratively address these issues? And so that trust with Adam's leadership to have these engagement conversations, to be in a position to now all of a sudden not just be managing reputation out, which is what social responsibility traditionally is, but how do you comment on things that are going on, right? I saw this shift 4 or 5 years ago to, there's racism. How does the NBA deal with racism? And it's like, well, wait a second, this is a societal issue, but now as a company, you're being asked to step forward and lead within this position. It's much different than what companies used to do. And so All-Star became this platform to address a lot of issues and to make sure we're engaging in the city and doing the right things and turning to leaders like yourself and others in Louisiana to make sure. I know we had Mitch involved, we had other people involved in things that we did there. And it became a kind of a shine the light moment on everything else we're doing during the year. But I would stress that this foundational piece I talked about it being a core pillar of our business strategy, really has positioned us well to be able to manage it, because it's collectively a priority for all of us that work at the NBA.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I want to go back to one thing you said. You said when you were younger, you had this great professor, you learned about gender, sexism, racism, right? And I'm looking at all the questions, and I have a new one coming up for you. And I'm not asking a question. I'm just making an observation. I am as interested in anybody else in what's going to happen with the NBA and who we think is going to win and all that. But, it breaks my heart. No one's asking me about the WNBA. The season's supposed to start.
The draft was amazing. Did you see it Friday? The draft was amazing.
The whole draft. So did Shifty. But, and I tweeted about it. I spoke about it. But there should be energy around that if we really care about our female athletes. And, God bless David Stern. Every day I would thank him for, I don't know anybody else who had done what he did. I don't know. Anyway, nobody's asking those questions, so you and I can talk about this. It also brought you together in a wonderful way, but it is breaking my heart a little bit here.
I will say this, Donna, before you jump into the question, I will say the one thing people talked about with Kobe so much was his legacy around women's basketball. And I know they announced an award for Kobe and Gigi. And when Kobe came to the office, Kathy Engelberg, who's a commissioner at the W, talks about this now. She's like, yeah, he didn't want to see, he just wanted to meet Kathy. He wanted to understand who was leading women's basketball, what was going on. His Mamba Academy came forward, and his legacy of inspiring doing that. And you saw a number of the women players like Diana and others talk about how powerful in their connection with Kobe. I think it was a piece that people didn't know about him. And he was a true champion of the W in a way that I think anybody's doing. I don't know if you remember
this, but Jelly Bean, his dad, Jelly Bean Bryant, one of our coaches. And we always be like, hey, where's Kobe? And Kobe would sit and watch, but that was the height of his career. He was not in that headspace then. And when Adam told this great story at the Legends game, Arnie, just a couple of weeks ago at the All-Star game in Chicago, it was stunning because Kobe by himself really can flip the whole league.
He just wanted to talk about W. He didn't want to talk about NBA at all.
Amazing. Anyway, Jeffrey Doman, who I don't know, but it looks like he's from Chicago. He wants to know whether the NBA collaborates with Beyond Sport. And you and I are both friends with Lex Salat, international organization using sport as a tool to improve impoverished communities in the world. So he's interested, do you collaborate with them?
Yeah, we work closely with Nick and Lex and the whole team at Beyond Sport. They're terrific. They opened up an office in the U.S. Beyond Sport United is their big event, but we do a lot of other things with them, other panels and dinners and other things. We're actually participating in something in Europe right now with them that our head of our European office is speaking at their event in terms of how we're responding to COVID-19 as a business. And so Beyond Sport is a terrific organization. For those that don't know, all the leagues are founding partners along with a number of the European leagues. So the EPL, La Liga, Bundesliga, and by the way, all sport leagues. And so what they've done is really kind of brought everybody together, both professional leagues, teams, nonprofits in the sport development for space, and really have really had terrific conversations on ways we can collaborate together, highlight and shine the light on great programs to replicate as well as to recognize. They now provide grants for them. They've spun off and actually do consulting work now, which I think is a terrific thing in making sure they're spreading the word. So Beyond Sport, if you're interested in sport and sport for development, They are an organization that you have to go check out. Big fans of the work that they do, and we're going to continue to do that. We're already talking about what does this look like now with them, as we all are, in terms of what do you do virtually. And I know they're doing some stuff virtually online. So if you are interested in the sport for development space, I encourage you to go to beyondsport.org, look at their work, check it out. I know Joanne and the Niners have partnered on STEM stuff with them. And so they've been a terrific partner, and they continue to be somebody we talk to all the time.
That's awesome. Arnie?
All right. Well, let me just say something about the WNBA, Donna, because one of the things I was most proud of during my tenure with the retired players is through Todd's help and the help of a lot of people in the league office, we brought the WNBA former players into the membership of the NBA retired players. And I now look at what they're doing currently, and it is just amazing. They're doing some phenomenal work, and they do great summits every year, and it's a really wonderful program. And you were a part of it, and so was Todd. Todd, no, thank you. Hey, Todd, I just want to shift course a little bit and just have you talk a little bit about your Maccabi experience and
Sure.
what you see with the organization and see as our potential, and maybe weave into that kind of your Jewish background and how that may have influenced some of the things you've done.
Yeah, I mean, Maccabi is it's grown over time. And it's interesting, as I've been contacted to participate in the over 45 soccer. I'm not sure I have it in me. If Steph Greenberg is on, don't call me again, Steph. I'm going to tell you no again. But I think it's one of those things that, regardless whether you play or not, once you do, you're connected for life. And I think it's so much more than sport, as sport tends to be. The friendships that I've had and formed over time continue. I'm still friends with a number of people I traveled with to Israel in 1997. Matter of fact, we did a Zoom call the other day with a number of them. And so you can see the power of the games themselves to bring people together. For me, it was a part of my whole life. I mean, I grew up, I played in the Maccabi games in Detroit in 1990. It was my first experience there, playing for the Suffolk YMCA in Long Island, or YW, is it YCA? I think I'm actually going to the JCC there. And it was an amazing experience to do that. And I had such a great time playing in the games in Detroit in the U.S. I played in the regional games in New Jersey, that when it came time, and I actually played when I graduated college, I deferred work because it was my dream to play in the Maccabi games. I really wanted to do it. It was something that I looked forward to. Roby Young, who's a very, very well-known Jewish soccer player, was my coach growing up for many, many years. His sons, Rod and Tamir, had played in it. I played for Dave Sarakin at Cornell. David went on to be the national team coach. He's coaching down in North Carolina now. He had played in the games. And so there's a legacy there for me through my soccer career of growing up in it, being coached by people that had played in it, and just seeing it as a great platform. And it really lived up to the expectations for me. 97 was a tough year. I think for those that played in it, you might remember it was a tragedy that took place with the bridge collapsing. The United States team we were probably about 25 yards from the bridge when it fell. I remember that. It was heartbreaking. We held there was a kind of a hiatus with the games. We did candlelight vigil. It was very sad. But those moments, watching this community come together and rally and support people around that kind of showed the power of the Maccabi experience and what it stands for. And so while you're there to compete, you create friendships and bonds long after. I know it sounds cliche, but it is certainly true. And it continues to be such a wonderful organization. I mean, when I was asked to be involved, it was like, of course. I mean, what can I do? And I continue to see it, from an alumni standpoint. I know we're always trying to crack the code, but you always want to give that experience to somebody else if you've had it. And there's really nothing quite like the Maccabi experience. I still think about it and treasure the relationships I had.
And Todd, I have to say, just before Donna jumps in here, I was a Masters basketball in '97. And standing, we didn't know each other, I don't think, but standing near each other,
right next to each other, right?
Yeah, it's a memory that is etched in our minds forever of that evening.
Yep, that and that awful shirt they made us wear with was the flag, and I don't know, kind of it was god awful. I look back at photos that day, and I was going to believe they put us in that. But
we'll blame Shane Carr, but I'm not sure if Shane was part of that or not.
Sorry, Shane, but they were awful.
Hey, Dan, just looking at the time, I have one more question from our chat that I'm happy to share with Todd. And then I guess we'll throw it to you. It's from Merle, who I cannot see, but I see her question. What does Todd think about if there is a possibility to complete the season, and will there be a NBA season next year?
Great question. I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't know that. I mean, I think, Adam's been very transparent about sharing his views here. And his views are, we're going to follow CDC guidelines, and when testing becomes readily available and it's safe, we will come up with a plan to resume. And that's the plan. I think we are waiting like anybody else to make that decision. It's very hard, you're getting all this information. You just got to go and work with the experts to come up with the safest plan that you can. And so, like everyone else, you scenario plan, you do it, but it's way too early to make any type of decision. I know you've probably read a lot of things in sports about what different sports are looking to do. We're all talking and exploring that. But it wouldn't even be fair to say, because we just don't have enough information, what scenario is real. So whatever you're reading, I can tell you is not true right now. Because there is no decision that there's no kind of secret room where we're doing that. Like any other business, I think we're trying to come up with different ways on how to respond. But, I think the piece that I would commend us with the most is that we're being incredibly collaborative. And this is something Adam has done incredibly well with Michelle Roberts at the Players Association, and is really important. And Donna knows this as a leader that had to work with the basketball union when she was there.
I had Billy Hunter.
Yeah, I know you did. It's important to have that relationship, and it's important to have, to talk between the players and the governors about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And those conversations are happening. And so what makes me, as we're having these conversations, what makes me proud to be part of the organization is difficult conversations have to happen. But if you don't have the right people in the room, you're never going to make the right decision. And the right people in the room are everybody involved. That's a key player. Key players, any players that are on the Players Executive Committee. You have Adam and the leadership of the NBA and all of us kind of having those conversations and really kind of listening to the experts and doing that. And, it's interesting kind of being in this world. I know you mentioned the government experience as well. I know Trump has been very kind of vocal about reopening and things. And I think, look, it's okay. I mean, I understand why we need to do this, but we have to do it at a time when it's safe and there's the proper testing and protocols in place. And until then, you're not going to see a clear decision on what's going to happen. But, my hope, like everybody else's, that, in the coming weeks, it'll become a little bit clearer to be able to make some of those distinctions, and then those answers will become clearer. I wish I could give you a better answer, but that's the truth.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I think we'll start to close it out. I just want to tell you, Todd, thank you so much for being with us. It's a lot of fun to reminisce about the past and talk about the future. And, we so appreciate what you're doing at the NBA League office. We certainly appreciate what you do for Maccabi. And I just want to wish you and your family a lot of good health and safety over the coming weeks. And please give our best to the commissioner and everybody else at the NBA office.
I will. And I'll give a plug for this for people that are interested in learning more. Check out NBAtogether.com. We launched it. It's four things. Know your facts. So all the misinformation out there, we're working with the World Health Organization, CDC, and other local experts to make sure that right information is up there globally. So depending on the community, what we call acts of caring. So keep doing nice things for people. It doesn't have to be a big gesture. Little gestures matter. And we have started to highlight that. Expand your community. So if you like basketball, we have something called Junior NBA at Home. We've had over 60 million views. We've launched a lot of content for coaches and kids. We have about 60 million kids in our programs around the world, 70 countries. So check it out. And then something called NBA Together Live. So every day on Instagram, on Twitter, we have Ernie Johnson's show 2 days a week on Mondays and Wednesdays on Twitter as well. We have different type of people on there. So we've had conversations with Dr. Fauci. We've had conversations around believe it or not, we had a conversation with Joe Ingles during World Autism Awareness Day. Joe has a son who's on the spectrum. We brought in an organization called Culture City to talk about if you have a child on the spectrum, what resources are there, making sure you have an open dialogue there. We have Earth Day coming up. So we're trying to integrate a lot of different pieces in there that are incredibly important that we continue to stay engaged on virtually. And so if you want to check it out and see what we're doing, I recommend it. I think you'll enjoy it. And there's a lot of good opportunities to engage and really learn about a lot of organizations, frankly, that are doing incredible work during this time to keep everything going. So check it out, NBAtogether.com.
So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. This has been a really amazing hour, went incredibly fast. I'd like to especially thank Arnie and Donna for guiding us through this conversation. and our special guest, Todd, for joining us. And our alumni stepping up and really not just to provide us a programming of interest, but stepping up and really emphasizing Tikkun Olam, really demonstrating for all of us the importance of giving back and repairing the world. I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. We have a long list of other programs. We invite all of you to join us in the coming days. Please go to our website at the Maccabi USA at Home to see everything else that's coming up. I can't promise that we're going to have quite the level of prestige every single night, but I promise that we will have great engaging programming for all different kinds of content. So please join us again soon, and thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.